What's up guys, Doug Polk here, and today I'm going to be giving you 5 quick tips on how to make more money playing poker. I think all of these things can help you make more money playing, even though number 5 is undoubtedly going to make some of you angry. But before we jump into that, I want to quickly let everyone know about Upswing Poker's Thanksgiving sale. We're going to be having a sale for the next 5 days. Everything on the site will be 20% off. This ends Monday night at midnight on Cyber Monday, where things will go back to their regular prices. So if you were interested in purchasing something from Upswing, this could be the time to do it. Also, if you have a question about any Upswing product, you can add me on Snapchat at WCGWriter. I'm going to go through and answer all of your questions you might have about a course. I imagine this is going to be an easy task. 5 or 6 people tops. Okay, maybe 10 or 20. But I can't imagine it being more than that. Also, if you send me an image, I'm not clicking on it. It's one of the reasons I had to go private on Snapchat to begin with. But anyway, you can use this code to get 20% off anything on the site. So if you're interested, now is probably the time to check it out. All right, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into tip number 1. Our first tip is a simple one. Whenever you're taking a line for value, let's say you check raise to set, bet the turn, and you're jamming the river. Or let's say you called 2 streets and hit the nuts in the river and you're going for a check raise. Or let's say you c-bet the turn and you made your draw on the river. Any one of those situations where you have a good hand and you're about to put in the rest of your chips or a bunch of them. Take a brief moment and stop and ask yourself, what hands would I bluff here with? If the answer is none, or the answer is you can't think of a specific hand, then you're probably not bluffing enough. Okay, so maybe that tip wasn't so quick, but it's a fantastic way to improve your play. In fact, one of the ways I was able to get better at poker was whenever I played a hand, and I looked at the line I took and I thought to myself, what would I bluff here with? If the answer wasn't so clear, then I'd take some time after the session to figure out good bluff hands. Let me give you a simple example. Let's say you call an open with pocket 5s and float against a small bet on a board like Jack 8 deuce. Well, if the turn comes a 5 and your opponent bets, you're going to want to mainly raise. The reason is that if your opponent has a good hand like top pair and overpair, you want to try and get some value. And even though you might not be able to bluff catch as much now against weaker hands, you still have some top pairs that can do that for you. Well, in these situations, a lot of players don't figure out how to also raise enough bluffs. You can't only raise your 5s. If you're playing someone that you knew was doing that, then you could just always fold to the raise unless you had a higher set. So you have to figure out some bluffs. This is where it gets kind of tricky. You can't bluff a ton because you don't really turn very many good hands. Really only pocket 5s gets better on the turn. Or then maybe a hand like Jack 5 suited, but you're probably not playing that unless you're in the big blind. So how do we figure out what other hands we want to bluff with? We have to pick some draws that didn't raise the flop and work them in. So maybe we want to raise with a hand like Queen 10 or 10-9 some of the time to balance out pocket 5s. If our opponent calls on the turn and then the river bricks off, we again want to go all in with our 5s, but now we have to pick some bluffs again. We don't want to go all in with all of the hands that raise the turn. We only want to go all in with most of them. So we have to think of a way. Would we rather go on with Queen 10 or with 10-9 and have a consistent way to do it? If you're not figuring out ranges like this where you think of your value and then work in your bluffs that give up and then work in your bluffs that go 2 streets, then you're always going to find yourself either under bluffing or over bluffing because you're not creating a good balanced strategy. So start doing this. After your session, write a hand down and ask yourself, what would I have done here as a bluff? And you're going to find, and I've seen so many databases analyze so many hands, I constantly see this, you're going to find you're actually under bluffing in a lot of situations where you need to get creative and work in a few bluffs. Plus, bluffing's great, right? What's the worst that could happen?
302,000 is the bet. Wow, he does call.
Fold! Bluffing sauce is so bad.
No, my God, no way. Whoa!
Oh my God!
He called!
Oh my God!
Thanks, Thomas, for that highlight reel. Tip number 2 might sound like tip number 1, but it's actually a bit different. You should always be looking to create new ranges. I think it's easy for us to fall into the rut of constantly playing our hands the same. When we have a good hand, we always raise and barrel off, or maybe we always trap, or maybe we like to check raise the turn. But we don't do a very good job of balancing out and using all of these different lines. If you reach a spot on the flop or turn or river and you think, wow, I would almost never raise here with anything, maybe it's time to start working in some raises with both good hands and bluffs. That way you can get some value with your good hands and you might be able to get them off a holding that's better than yours when you have a bluff. Now, what I am not saying is always raise stuff everywhere. I'm specifically not saying that. Here are some examples of situations you should never bet or raise. Heads up pots where you call it an open. Paired boards where you call it an open. Paired boards where you call it a 3-bet. 4-bet pots where you call it a 4-bet. All of these situations should basically never have leads. Now, I know if you want to get super technical that like a perfect game theory solution would have like a small percentage of bets in all of these spots. I know that. But we're going to be checking mainly no matter what, and it simplifies our decision by doing that. If you have to try and figure out what 2% of hands you'd want to bet with and 98% of hands are going to check, you add complexity for not very much upside. But in most spots, we do want to have bets or raises. Most turns and rivers, we can hit some good hands as well. And we also want to find some hands that want to bluff. So always be aware and thinking about when do I want to create a new situation to raise my opponent's bet or bet when my opponent checked. Always be thinking about those spots. And then maybe you can get some new and creative ideas to create some ranges.
Ooh.
And there it goes.
Folks decides to ship it all in there.
Jason moves all in, and Doug snap calls.
Folks shoots it all in there. Then the ace snaps right off.
You just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Thanks, Thomas. Tip number 3 is to find tough games where you can learn and get better. Now, that does not mean every day you should play tough games. In fact, the majority of the time you should be searching for soft games. But I would recommend, even if you're a live poker player, sometimes play a little bit online to try and stay sharp and hone your skills. That also means if you're a live player, once in a while, if you see a tough table with a lot of regs, jump in there and see if you can hang. Even though this is not the best way to make the most right now, it might give you new and creative ideas to get better, but also you'll know in the future if you have to play a tougher game with 1 or 2 weak spots that you can get in there and you can hang. Also, and I cannot stress this enough, if you play some online, you get hand histories to look at. You can review your statistics. You can see how often you do things. You can see what your open frequencies are like, or your check raise, or your c-bet, and that way you can get things to be where you want them. If you never play online, you're just kind of guessing about how often you're doing things, and it's much better to actually play and see in the tracker exactly how it's going for you. All right, let's do the thing with the highlight reel again, but let's just do all the tough lamps I've played in the last few years. Wait, where's the rest of the highlight reel? I think... Thomas? Oh shit, I'm a live pro. Tip number 4 is always compare your game to good players to see if you can figure out things to add into your own game. One of the things that allowed me to move up in Heads Up No Limit quickly was that anytime I played someone and I thought they did something particularly well, I would steal their idea and try and do it better. Now, that did not mean I always put everything I saw into my game. Most things I saw sucked, but occasionally you'll play someone and you'll realize they're doing something very well that you might want to add into your game. When you're watching a good player play, write a few things that they do down that you might not be doing yourself. Then after the session, try and think about what they're doing. Why are they doing this? What are the bluffs they can work in? Does it really make sense to have raises? And try and get a good idea for what they're trying to do. If you're an online player, then when you play with better players, look at their stats. See how much they open from different positions. See what kinds of hands they raise with. See what kinds of sizes they use. Maybe watch some 25-50 games where you see OTB Red Baron playing and see what sizes he uses in a lot of spots. That way you get good ideas for what you should be doing, and you might be able to guess some things as to why. Now, there are too many good players to count from where I got a lot of my strategy from, but let's show at least a few of them. No, that is not the list. That is not the list of people. What's up, guys? Doug Polk here, and I'm looking for a new video editor because my editor has no idea what he's doing.
Haha, just kidding. These jokes are actually very funny.
All right, let's finish this fucking video. Tip number 5. Oh yeah, and this might make some of you angry. Now, tip number 5. If you seek the truth, can help your game substantially. But if you like to just pile on people on videos and get angry about things, you're not going to like this one bit. Tip number 5 is that post-flop, when you have an option between 2 or 3 things, you should sometimes be doing all of them. I know that just makes you mad. You're sitting there like, no, Doug, you don't understand. You should always call, or you should always raise, or you should always fold. And look, sometimes that's true. With extreme cases, that will be true. But most hands post-flop, you got to mix in some other stuff. And I know this is going to make you mad. If you have a hand so tough that you post and want the answer to, the answer is almost always you should be doing some of both of your options. If your opponent jams the river and you just don't know what to do, flip a coin. It sounds like a joke, but it's actually true. In spots that are really close, then you have to decide how much you should be doing it. If you have a really bad hand, you can probably always fold. And if you have a really good hand, then you should obviously either call or always raise. But when you have that middle hand, sometimes it's not really clear what you should be doing. In those spots, you likely have to sometimes call and sometimes fold, or sometimes call and sometimes raise. And that's just the way that things are in poker. What makes poker such a beautiful game is that the strategy is deep and complex. Oftentimes, you'll have to mix in small amounts of things, and people aren't good at doing that. If you're on your computer, maybe you can use a randomizer and do something a couple percentage of the time. But when you're at a table, people don't want to have to do that, and they're also not good at picking out those unlikely events. Now, I get it. When you're in the situation, you can only do one thing. You can only either call or fold. But you want to pretend like you're in that spot 100 times or 1,000 times. What would you want to do over all of those 100 times or all of those 1,000 times? And if the answer is close, you probably want to do some of both options. One of the absolute most important things in poker is finding balance. And here we're talking about balance within the context of our entire strategy. Figure out ways to do something a small amount of the time. If something seems like it should mainly be a call or it's a better call, then do that most of the time. But once in a while, work in some bluffs, work in some raises. This also can account for sometimes when we see it what looks to be a crazy play, maybe it was only happening a small percentage of the time. And if you want to be an elite player, you have to understand that low frequency moves can look weird or crazy, but in the context of an entire strategy, they can oftentimes be good. Let's take a look at some spots that at first glance might seem wrong, but actually have a lot of merit.
She puts in 6 bets with Jack high.
Oh, he is sick and twisted. It's a man that doesn't like to fold.
This is sick.
Buddy, they cooler me 50 times a day, every day.
I folded it, Mike. I just folded it.
That was the worst fold I ever saw in my life.
No. None of those plays. Well, that's going to do it here today. I definitely want to thank my video editor for all the awesome editing and really highlighting a lot of the tips today. That was great. And again, guys, we have a sale going on at upswingpoker.com. This code below, 20% off everything on the site. If you're interested, you can talk to me on Snapchat. I'll answer your questions. I'll see you guys again soon.